15, the question is agreed to.
International Finance Agreements Amendment Bill, third reading.
Call on Government Order of the Day number 5.
Reserve Bank of New Zealand Covered Bonds Amendment Bill, interrupted debate on second reading.
Members, this is an interrupted debate. John Hayes had the call. It appears he's not seeking to take the remainder of his speech. The next call goes to New Zealand First. Andrew Williams has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Take a call to continue the debate on the Reserve Bank Covered Bonds Bill. As we've heard in the previous reading, this is all about providing a bonded system through our banking system to ensure that there is some certainty for international investment in New Zealand through our banking scheme. Covered bonds have been used by our banks for several years. This formalises the arrangements. The BNZ, I think, was the first New Zealand bank to start issuing them, but without the formalities of the Parliament here that is required to confirm the arrangements internationally. We have a few reservations about this, which we would like discussed at committee level. The first being that they're talking 10% here in terms of the bond percentage to the banks. Australia has 8%, other countries have less. I think Canada is as low as 4 or 5%. It is questionable whether New Zealand should go as high as 10% for covered bonds when our partners across the Tasman are on 8%, and we would question through the committee stages whether New Zealand should be more in line with Australia rather than at the higher level, and what impact that would have on our banking system by being at the slightly higher level. So, we always are trying to be on a level playing field with Australia, and it would seem to be more sensible that we were the same. It also, while these are necessary in a way to provide an element of certainty to our financial institutions and for people investing in our international institutions, it also means that, of course, these covered bonds have a higher ranking in terms of their status over other investors in the bank. And we've already had a case of something like 61 financial institutions in this country going belly up in the last few years, and it would be somewhat concerning if we were at a level of deposits up to 10%, which had international first preference over our banks should, heaven forbid, there be a problem with one of our major banks in this country, and that they had first call on the funds ahead of good, hard-working New Zealand local investors. And in that respect, that is another reason perhaps to reconsider the 10% level, because we certainly don't want a situation where New Zealand investors second cab on the rank behind international investors who would dearly love probably to have that extra security here in this country and at the same time come and take advantage of what interest rates are being offered here compared to the virtually zero interest rates in parts of Asia, the United States and elsewhere. Mr. Speaker, the covered bonds have been around for several hundred years. I think they were first introduced in Sweden in the 17th century or thereabouts. They have been used extensively by various European banks over several hundred years. They are an international mechanism to provide a better security of basis for the banking system. We are very fortunate that the Australian and New Zealand banks are held in high regard internationally, and through the whole global financial crisis, certainly the Australasian banks have weathered the storm extremely well compared to many of their counterparts in Europe, the United States and elsewhere. And in that regard, therefore, we are even more attractive perhaps for international investment as a result. However, having said that, we certainly want to ensure that New Zealand comes out of this on the right side of the ledger, and that we're not just seen as perhaps an easy target to put money into for better security than other places in the world which perhaps don't have the same level of confidence in their particular banking systems. Mr. Speaker, we are very fortunate that we are living in a good, stable democracy where the value of the banking system is highly valued. In this regard, this does provide added weight to that banking system. New Zealand First is always looking for mechanisms by which the banking system is controlled in a better way. We believe it was very remiss that we had 61 institutions in this country going belly up. We do believe that an instance such as the South Canterbury finance situation, where $1.6 billion had to be written off by this government and taken up by this government, paid for by New Zealand taxpayers, was incorrect. It was particularly disappointing that in the last 6 months of that bank, that so many more additional funds were invested there because of the retail guarantee scheme that the government offered, and that oversight was allowed to continue for six months unfettered and unrestrained by the Reserve Bank or the Treasury, and not properly monitored by the Minister of Finance to ensure that those banks, such as the South Canterbury Finance Bank, didn't go belly up. So in that regard, we've got something to learn from some of the errors in our banking system, but in this regard, this is good legislation that provides another element of certainty to our banking structure. It will encourage sound investment in this country. It does start to question the need for the sale of state assets when we have been told by the government that is a way of securing more investment in this country through the sale of state assets. New Zealand First does not believe that is the case, and we believe there are many other mechanisms to encourage investment in this country, including supporting our manufacturing and our drive to encourage the growth of our economy, not from the sale of assets. So, Mr. Speaker, New Zealand First will be supporting this bill, and we commend it to the House.
David Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.